Patrick Cook here. Thanks for returning in our Mandelbulb 3D Tutorial Series, where we have been going through in detail the Mandelbulb 3D fractal generator application. What I thought we would do here in this session, maybe another session after this, is let me show you the Mandelbulb 3D software application, what they usually refer to as source code. In other words, all of the code and the components that go into making the Mandelbulb 3D executable program. Now, all right, now let's set some stakes in the ground here. First of all, what we're looking at here on the screen is the Embarcado Delphi development environment. All right, and that's often referred to as an IDE. It is an integrated development environment. Now, you can go to the website. Let me turn the browser on for you. And you could take a look at the Wikipedia, the Delphi software history. It goes pretty far back. I mean, I remember working with the Delphi, which was under the Borland brand at that time. My goodness, that must have been early 80s, mid 80s, okay? So the Delphi programming language goes back quite a long ways. It's got a lot of rich history to it, and it's actually been quite popular. Borland did a number of really good things with the language, and they put out some really good software development tools. And then, of course, it was at one point, I forget exactly when, but it was acquired by another company, Embarcado. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Probably not. I really didn't have much to do with the Delphi after maybe. Maybe 92 or 93. Now, if you also want to look into the programming language itself, which is referred to as Pascal, you could also read up on that at Wikipedia as well. All right. Now here again, I mean, I'm not proposing that you become a developer here. But if you want to look a little bit under the covers, if you will, of the Mandelbulb 3D software application, you might find it interesting to read up on some of the background of the Pascal programming language and, of course, of the Delphi software itself. Now, if you were really interested, you could download a free Delphi Community Edition. All right, now they say it's full-featured, and it's not really. What I found was that it has limitations when it comes to compiling an application, but more importantly, it's not full-featured in terms of the Mandelbulb 3D application. And the reason I say that is this. The Mandelbulb 3D application, as far as I can tell, was created and compiled under the Delphi development environment of 7. Now, Delphi currently is at, I believe it's Delphi 11. In order to compile an older application, you have two choices. You can either compile it without updating it to the latest, in this particular case, Delphi development environment. Okay, in which case the application, the code would need to be actually updated, which can have some pretty serious ramifications. All right, it can modify features and functionality. The newer code, the newer Pascal or the newer development environment could very well have eliminated certain keywords or certain algorithms that the older software depended upon, in which case the software would be broken and it would have to be repaired. But that's one way. You update the application to the newest development environment. The other option is to recompile with an older development environment, and in this case, the Mandelbulb3D, as far as anybody can tell, was compiled under the Delphi 7. All right, in which case you would have to revert your development environment back to the older version and compile it there. Well, that's where this full-featured doesn't apply anymore. It may be full-featured if you were working with a more recent Delphi application, but when you're working with an older one, you'd have to go back to Embarcadero and obtain their compiler for 7, or for their version 7 of Delphi, and it's not free anymore. All right, so I found that it is virtually impossible to recompile. Now, what recompile means, what compiling means, is it takes all of the human understandable code and compiles it to machine code to get your executable, and that is the file that you can double click on and it will operate, it'll run. That's an executable. In order for your application to be compiled to an executable, you need to have the ability to compile it. Now, okay, now one other thing here while we're here in this session. In the next session, I'm going to show you around the Mandelbulb application at the code level, not to make you a programmer, but to help you kind of understand what this Mandelbulb3D software looks like, all right, under the covers. But one last thing here before we break this session. You can go to, now I assume you're gathering the URLs here as we're going along, all right. Now you certainly can go to GitHub, github.com, and you can download the source code for the Mandelbulb3D application, okay? Now this source code basically is giving you all of the code that goes into creating the application. Now I really have to admire the people that have made this Mandelbulb3D software source code available. All right, these are your various. This is a form right here, a DFM form. This is code. Okay, they're giving you everything. There are no secrets here. There are no hidden cost in obtaining this Mandelbulb3D software source code. So that's pretty cool. That is very nice. All right, and they've also kept track of the various releases over the years. And then you get down into here, and I mentioned this in an earlier session of our Mandelbulb3D Tutorial Series, is that there's a very good README describing quite a bit about the application itself. All right? So that's pretty good information right there as from a user's standpoint. This is not technical software development information. This is how to use the software. So, all right, so let's wrap up this session by just saying that you can download the Mandelbulb 3D source code. You can obtain, without any cost, you can obtain a Delphi development environment. You're limited in what you can do. You can look around. You can't compile it, and I'll explain why. All right. You can certainly read up on the Pascal programming language, the history of it, and certainly get a little brief introduction to the Delphi programming development environment in its history. Okay? All right, so let's end this session. When we come back, I'm going to be showing you the Delphi development environment, and we'll poke around, we'll look around, not as developers, but just to kind of get an appreciation for what is behind this Mandelbulb 3D software. Okay, so I'll see you in the next session.